December 7th, 1941. Pearl Harbor burns. America enters World War II. Within weeks, the United States military confronts a crisis more catastrophic than any battlefield defeat. A crisis threatening to immobilize every tank, aircraft, ship, and vehicle in the American arsenal. Japan has seized control of 90% of the world's natural rubber supply. Without rubber, American forces cannot advance, cannot transport supplies, cannot wage mechanized warfare. Military analysts project complete operational breakdown within 18 months. The clock starts ticking. What nobody realizes is that salvation already exists, hidden inside laboratory notebooks belonging to a chemist whose experiments colleagues dismissed as pointless, whose research supervisors ordered terminated, whose breakthrough material everyone considered worthless industrial refuse. Dr. Waldo Semen had devoted years heating and mixing a rigid, useless polymer that every other researcher abandoned as hopeless garbage. His managers demanded he stop squandering company resources. His fellow chemists laughed at his obsessive tinkering. But in 1926, Semen accidentally created something impossible. A flexible, rubber-like substance made from polyvinyl chloride, the most despised waste material in chemistry. 15 years later, that dismissed experiment would rescue Allied military operations. This is how one chemist's stubborn refusal to quit, combined with American manufacturing capacity performing at extraordinary levels, transformed a ridiculed laboratory curiosity into the material that kept millions of soldiers moving, supplied, and winning. January 1942, Washington. The War Production Board holds emergency sessions. The numbers paint disaster. The United States military demands 600,000 tons of rubber every year. Civilian requirements consume another 600,000 tons. America's strategic rubber stockpile holds exactly 530,000 tons, barely enough for peacetime consumption through mid-1943, catastrophically insufficient for wartime needs. Japan controls the Dutch East Indies, Malaya, and French Indochina, sources of 90% of global natural rubber production. The British hold Ceylon, producing minimal quantities, barely adequate for their own requirements. Every military asset requires rubber in quantities that seem impossible to replace. A single Sherman tank consumes half a ton of rubber components. Each battleship needs 75 tons distributed across thousands of gaskets, seals, and shock absorbers. A heavy bomber demands half a ton exclusively for tires, hydraulic lines, and electrical insulation systems. The standard military truck contains 300 separate rubber components, from engine mounts to door seals. Without rubber, aircraft stay grounded. Landing gear assemblies depend on rubber tires capable of withstanding extreme stresses. Hydraulic seals throughout the aircraft control surfaces require rubber compounds. Fuel system hoses must be rubber to handle aviation gasoline. Electrical wire insulation protecting thousands of connections needs rubber coating. Naval vessels cannot function without rubber. Engine room gaskets prevent catastrophic leaks. Vibration dampers protect delicate instruments. Countless seals keep salt water from flooding compartments. Submarine operations depend entirely on rubber seals maintaining pressure, hull integrity. Infantry cannot march effectively without proper footwear. Combat boots need rubber soles providing traction, durability, and protection. Rain gear requires rubber coating for waterproofing. Gas masks depend on rubber seals creating airtight barriers. Artillery pieces cannot fire without rubber components. Recoil systems use rubber shock absorbers, preventing the guns from destroying themselves. The chairman delivers an assessment silencing everyone present. Gentlemen, we possess enough rubber for military operations through early summer at current consumption rates. Beyond that point, we face absolute strategic paralysis. We cannot achieve victory without rubber. We cannot sustain combat operations without rubber. The alternative is watching our military forces become immobile, our aircraft grounded, our ships paralyzed. The obvious answer appears straightforward: manufacture synthetic rubber. But in 1942, synthetic rubber exists as laboratory experiments conducted in small batches, not industrial reality. Standard Oil and IG Farben developed processes using butadiene and styrene, creating Buna S rubber through German research shared before the war. American production in 1941 totaled merely 8,000 tons. Military requirements demand 600,000 tons annually. Scaling production from 8,000 tons to over 1 million tons within months seems impossible to every expert consulted. President Roosevelt issues Executive Order 9025, establishing the Rubber Supply Agency with unlimited authority and funding. The objective appears insane. Construct from nothing a synthetic rubber industry exceeding America's entire pre-war rubber consumption, operational within 18 months, while simultaneously fighting a two-ocean war. Financial analysts call it fantasy. Chemical engineers declare it impossible. Roosevelt's response enters legend. The specialists claimed it couldn't happen. Find me individuals who don't know that. What specialists didn't know was that synthetic rubber foundations already existed, buried in dismissed research. Those foundations were laid by a chemist in Ohio who spent 15 years enduring mockery for attempting to make industrial garbage flexible. Waldo Lonsbury Semen was born September 10, 1898 in Demopolis, Alabama, raised in poverty making college seem unreachable. But Semen possessed something transcending economic circumstances, a consuming curiosity about why materials behaved as they did. He observed rubber products failing, watched materials break down under stress, wondered constantly if chemistry could create better alternatives. He won scholarship to the University of Washington after his family moved west when he was 7 years old. He earned his undergraduate chemistry degree, graduating cum laude in 1920. He completed his doctorate in 1924, studying chemical engineering, among the first doctoral degrees awarded in that field nationally. His dissertation explored how molecular structures determined material behaviors, work that would prove essential decades later, though nobody recognized its significance at the time. B.F. Goodrich hired Semen immediately, assigning him to their Akron, Ohio research laboratory, the heart of American rubber manufacturing. His initial projects involved improving rubber adhesives and developing coating materials. The work was conventional, predictable, uninspiring. Semen dutifully completed his assignments while dreaming of revolutionary breakthroughs. In 1925, Goodrich management asked Semen to investigate potential uses for polyvinyl chloride, abbreviated PVC. This polymer had been discovered in 1872 by German chemist Eugen Baumann, who accidentally created it, leaving vinyl chloride exposed to sunlight. The resulting material was rigid, brittle, apparently valueless. For 50 years, PVC remained a chemical oddity, mentioned in academic papers but ignored by industry. Every chemist examining PVC over 5 decades reached identical conclusions. The material was excessively rigid for practical applications. Its brittleness made forming useful shapes impossible. Industrial chemistry advanced beyond PVC entirely, pursuing more promising polymers. Universities used PVC as teaching examples of unsuccessful polymerization. But Semen viewed PVC differently. If the material was too rigid naturally, perhaps chemistry could alter that property. Conventional wisdom declared this impossible. PVC's molecular structure locked its chains into rigid configurations. Heating PVC merely degraded it. Adding solvents either dissolved the material or produced no effect. Semen tried anyway. He began experiments his colleagues openly ridiculed. He mixed PVC with various compounds, plasticizers, oils, resins, subjecting mixtures to heat and pressure in systematic variations. Other chemists called it stupid effort. "You cannot make PVC flexible," they told him. "You're wasting time on garbage chemistry. Focus on real projects." For 18 months, Semen failed repeatedly. PVC mixed with mineral oils stayed brittle. PVC mixed with vegetable oils degraded into sludge. PVC mixed with various solvents either dissolved or remained rigid. His supervisor suggested moving toward more promising research. Semen requested 6 additional months, promising significant progress. Management reluctantly agreed. Then one morning in 1926, Semen tried something different. He mixed PVC with tricresyl phosphate, a chemical normally used as gasoline additive. He subjected the mixture to prolonged heating at carefully controlled temperatures. When he opened the reaction vessel, he discovered something that shouldn't exist: a flexible rubber-like material that could bend without breaking, twist without shattering, stretch without tearing. Semen had accidentally discovered plasticization, the process of inserting small molecules between rigid polymer chains, allowing them to slide past each other. The rigid PVC structure remained intact, but plasticizer molecules acted as microscopic ball bearings, enabling flexibility while maintaining strength. It was revolutionary chemistry that nobody had predicted. His colleagues remained unimpressed. "It's not genuine rubber," they pointed out. "It doesn't possess rubber's elasticity." "What's the practical application?" Semen didn't have satisfactory answers. Flexible PVC wasn't quite rubber. It couldn't stretch as far. It couldn't recover from deformation as completely. It seemed to exist in awkward middle ground between rubber and rigid plastic. Goodrich filed patents on Semen's discovery but didn't pursue commercial development. The company operated in the rubber business. Flexible PVC wasn't rubber. Better to focus resources on improving actual rubber products. Semen continued his research despite lack of commercial support. He tried different plasticizers. He experimented with concentrations. He characterized the material's properties systematically. He built comprehensive understanding of flexible PVC that nobody else possessed because nobody else cared about the material. But flexible PVC remained a laboratory curiosity, generating papers but no revenue. By 1940, Semen had spent 14 years studying a material nobody wanted. Younger chemists surpassed him in promotions. His supervisor suggested transitioning to management. Colleagues pitied him for wasting talent on dead-end projects. Semen kept experimenting with PVC, stubbornly certain the material possessed value that others couldn't see. Then Japan captured Singapore on February 15, 1942, seizing the strategic center of global rubber production. The rubber crisis transformed from theoretical concern to immediate catastrophe. America needed synthetic rubber, measured in hundreds of thousands of tons, needed it within months. Suddenly, the material everyone dismissed became potentially valuable. The Rubber Reserve Company convened emergency meetings with every chemical company capable of large-scale production. Standard Oil presented their Buna S process. DuPont offered neoprene. Goodrich sent Dr. Waldo Semen to present his flexible PVC research. Semen's presentation met immediate skepticism. "Your material isn't rubber," procurement officers pointed out. "It doesn't possess rubber's elasticity. It can't replace natural rubber in most critical military applications. Why should we invest in developing your material?" Semen agreed with their technical objections. "Flexible PVC isn't a rubber substitute for most applications requiring elasticity," he admitted. "It won't work for tires or tank treads, but it can replace rubber in many applications where flexibility matters more than elasticity. Electrical insulation, hydraulic hoses, gaskets, combat boots, rain gear, hundreds of military items currently consuming scarce natural rubber." The procurement officers examined Semen's samples carefully. Material that resembled rubber superficially but behaved differently. They tested flexibility, temperature extremes, chemical resistance. Flexible PVC passed tests for applications not requiring true elasticity. "Can you produce this at industrial scale?" they asked. "We've never attempted industrial production," Semen admitted. "We have laboratory processes working at small scale. Scaling to industrial production would require solving numerous engineering challenges, temperature control at scale, mixing 1,000-pound batches, continuous processing, quality control. How long would scaling require?" Semen calculated mentally. Conventional development would require 3 years minimum. "But these aren't conventional circumstances," he added. "Could you accomplish it faster with unlimited resources?" "Give me authority, funding, and freedom from normal oversight," Semen proposed, "and we'll discover what's possible." The contract arrived at Goodrich on March 20, 1942. Semen received unlimited funding without normal budget constraints, highest national priority for materials and equipment, authority to commandeer any necessary resources. His mission was clear: create industrial-scale production of flexible PVC within 6 months, not 3 years, 6 months producing tons daily. The alternative was millions of soldiers without proper boots, aircraft without adequate hoses, vehicles without essential seals. Semin assembled teams of chemical engineers and began the most intense development program in plastics history. He recruited experienced engineers. He hired recent graduates willing to work relentless hours. He organized teams focusing on specific challenges while coordinating overall progress. The technical challenges were immense. Laboratory processes working perfectly at 1-pound batches failed catastrophically at 1,000-pound batches. Temperature distribution became impossible to control uniformly. Mixing 1,000-pound batches required equipment that didn't exist. Semin solved problems through relentless experimentation. When commercial mixers couldn't handle PVC viscosity, he designed custom mixing equipment working with Goodrich machine shops to fabricate prototypes within weeks. When temperature control proved impossible in large batch vessels, he developed continuous processing where material flowed through temperature-controlled zones. When plasticizer distribution created inconsistent products, he invented new mixing methods using shear forces. By September 1942, just 6 months after receiving the contract, Goodrich had operational pilot plants producing flexible PVC at rates exceeding 1 ton daily. Military inspectors tested the material exhaustively. Temperature tolerance, chemical resistance, flexibility, durability. Flexible PVC passed every test. The War Production Board ordered immediate full-scale production. By December 1942, 3 Goodrich plants were producing flexible PVC continuously. By March 1943, production exceeded 10,000 tons monthly. By June, 20,000 tons monthly. The material flowed into military supply chains, electrical insulation for aircraft wiring, fuel hoses for ground vehicles, rain gear for soldiers, gaskets for equipment, combat boots with flexible PVC soles. But flexible PVC was only one component of the synthetic rubber solution. True rubber replacement required Buna-S development, and that program faced even more daunting challenges. The Buna-S synthesis required butadiene derived from petroleum and styrene from ethylbenzene. In 1941, America produced virtually none of either chemical at required scales. The rubber program became the largest industrial mobilization in American history. The government financed construction of 51 synthetic rubber plants, 15 butadiene plants, and 29 styrene plants. Total investment exceeded $700 million, equivalent to over $12 billion in modern currency. The synthetic rubber program cost nearly as much as the Manhattan Project, and many historians argue the rubber program was more essential to Allied victory. Construction timelines normally requiring 3 years were compressed to 8 months. Plants designed Monday were under construction Friday. Equipment ordered in January arrived in March. Workers hired in May were training in June, producing rubber in July. Standard Oil's Buna-S process became the backbone of American synthetic rubber production. The chemistry was straightforward in principle. Butadiene and styrene mixed in 3:1 ratio, polymerized using free radical initiators at controlled temperatures. But scaling laboratory chemistry to industrial production required solving engineering challenges nobody had encountered. Butadiene production required cracking petroleum at precisely controlled temperatures. Too cool, yield dropped. Too hot, butadiene degraded. The catalysts required exotic metals available only in limited quantities. Purification demanded fractional distillation towers operating at extremely precise temperatures. Styrene production started with ethylbenzene, created by reacting ethylene with benzene. The ethylbenzene was then dehydrogenated. This process required temperatures exceeding 1,000 degrees Fahrenheit, specialized catalysts, and extremely pure feedstocks. The polymerization itself demanded obsessive control. Temperature variations of 5 degrees ruined entire batches. Contamination by oxygen stopped polymerization. Excessive initiator created degraded rubber. Insufficient initiator left unreacted monomers. American chemical engineers solved every problem through brute force experimentation. When catalyst supplies ran short, they developed alternative catalysts. When temperature control systems failed, they designed better control systems. When contamination caused failures, they built cleaner facilities. When they needed 5 times more chemical engineers than existed in America, they trained petroleum engineers, mechanical engineers, even bright high school graduates in crash courses lasting weeks. Training programs compressed 4-year degrees into intensive courses. By late 1943, American synthetic rubber production exceeded 100,000 tons monthly. By spring 1944, production surpassed natural rubber consumption from before the war. By mid-1945, production reached nearly 920,000 tons annually. The impossible had become routine. The rubber program succeeded through American industrial capacity operating at extraordinary levels. Factories appeared in months where factories hadn't existed. Chemical plants producing exotic materials began operations within 1 year. Trained workers materialized through emergency training programs. Supply chains created themselves through improvisation. Dr. Waldo Semon's flexible PVC became a critical component of this success. While true synthetic rubber replaced natural rubber in tires and elastic applications, flexible PVC replaced rubber in thousands of military items where flexibility mattered more than elasticity. Electrical insulation for aircraft, ships, vehicles, communication equipment. Hydraulic hoses resisting oils better than natural. Rubber. Gaskets for equipment. Rain gear for soldiers. Tents waterproofed with PVC coatings. Combat boots with PVC soles, gloves, medical equipment tubing, communication wire insulation. The list extended across hundreds of categories. By war's end, American production of flexible PVC exceeded 200,000 tons annually. The material Semon's colleagues mocked 15 years earlier had become essential to military supply chains. The discovery of mixing plasticizers with rigid polymer and applying heat had created an entirely new class of materials dominating modern life. Vinyl flooring in millions of buildings, plastic pipes carrying water, insulated electrical wires in every structure, countless consumer products from shower curtains to credit cards. Every application traces origins to Semon's persistence. The broader synthetic rubber program produced over 920,000 tons in 1945, exceeding America's total pre-war rubber consumption. The PROSM program employed over 70,000 workers in plants across the country. It consumed enormous quantities of petroleum and chemicals. It represented industrial mobilization so vast it seemed impossible until accomplished. After the war ended, Semon received the American Chemical Society's highest honors. He received the Charles Goodyear Medal in 1944. He received the Elliott Cresson Medal in 1964. But characteristically, he remained focused on research rather than recognition. He held over 116 patents across diverse fields throughout his career: rubber chemistry innovations, plastics development, adhesives for industrial applications, coatings protecting surfaces. He led research teams developing thermoplastic polyurethane and other polymer families. He continued working at Goodrich until retiring in 1963 at age 65, still experimenting with new materials, still pursuing ideas others dismissed. In a 1970 interview when he was 72 years old, Semon reflected on his career with characteristic modesty. "People ask why I kept working on PVC when everyone said it was worthless," he explained. "The answer is simple. I believed the material had potential that others couldn't see. In science, the most important discoveries come from refusing to accept conventional wisdom. My colleagues thought I was stupid for heating and mixing garbage plastic. Maybe I was stupid by conventional standards, but that persistence created something useful." The interviewer pressed further. "Did you realize PVC would become so important?" Semon smiled. "In 1926, I thought I'd created an interesting laboratory curiosity. In 1942, I realized it might save lives. By 1945, it had become clear that flexible PVC would transform modern manufacturing. But even then, I couldn't have predicted how thoroughly vinyl materials would dominate modern life. You walk through any building and see PVC everywhere. Pipes, flooring, insulation, furnishings, drive any car and find PVC components throughout. You create something whose full implications only emerge decades later when other people find applications you never imagined. Today, global PVC production exceeds 40 million tons annually, making it the world's second most produced plastic. The material exists everywhere in modern civilization. Pipes carrying water to billions of people, medical equipment saving lives, construction materials in virtually every building, automotive parts in every vehicle, thousands of consumer products. Every pound of material produced traces its lineage back to Semon's discovery in 1926. The synthetic rubber program stands as testament to American industrial capacity, mobilized under crisis. In 3 years, America created from nothing a chemical industry larger than its pre-war rubber consumption, developed new materials and processes, trained tens of processes, thousands of workers for jobs that didn't exist, built dozens of enormous facilities, produced rubber at scales that supplied not just American needs but Allied requirements. The program cost $700 million, massive investment equivalent to substantial fraction of military budget. But the investment saved the war effort. Without synthetic rubber, Allied victory would have been impossible. Without rubber, tanks would have sat immobile. Aircraft would have been grounded. Ships would have been paralyzed. Soldiers would have marched in inadequate boots. Artillery couldn't have fired. Vehicles couldn't have operated. The entire Allied military machine depended absolutely on rubber. Synthetic rubber kept it moving, fighting, winning. Without the synthetic rubber program succeeding, the war would have been lost through material paralysis. Dr. Waldo Semon died on May 26, 1999 in Hudson, Ohio, at age 100. He lived long enough to see PVC everywhere, to understand the full implications of his 1926 discovery. His obituaries noted his technical achievements, his 116 patents, his honors from professional societies, his role training subsequent generations, his donations supporting science education, but perhaps his most important legacy was demonstrating that persistence matters in ways that can't be quantified, that dismissed ideas sometimes contain hidden value, that refusal to accept conventional wisdom about impossibility can lead to breakthroughs, that materials everyone dismisses sometimes become foundations of entire industries. Millions of American soldiers won their battles because one chemist refused to abandon an idea everyone laughed at for 15 years. They advanced across Europe wearing boots with synthetic soles. They rode in vehicles with synthetic seals and hoses. They used equipment insulated with flexible vinyl. They were supplied by logistics systems running on synthetic rubber. They won because Waldo Semon had been too stubborn to accept that rigid plastic must stay rigid, too persistent to abandon dismissed materials, too focused on potential to care about mockery. They won because when crisis came and America needed every possible material that could replace rubber, Semon had spent 15 years preparing. They won because American industrial capacity could mobilize on unprecedented scale. They won because scientists, engineers, workers, managers cooperated on scale never attempted. They won because government provided authority and funding. They won because everyone involved refused to accept that victory was impossible. The most important innovations often come from people who don't know their ideas are supposed to be impossible. Persistence can matter more than brilliance. And the chemist everyone laughs at for mixing garbage plastic can create the material that helps win the war that determines the future of civilization.